Hey guys, how are you today? So yesterday you should have seen a video on some solving quadratic equations by factorizing with the AC method. So we're going to build on that a little bit today. So basically, when you factor a quadratic equation, we had done last week the simple problems where there was just an x squared in the beginning. There was not a number in front of it. So like now we're going to be dealing with problems where there's a number in front of that x squared, or in this case, an n squared. And last week when we had that situation, we would divide everything by that number. So that was our GCF, and then we would be able to factor from there. When you have a number in the front like this one, the 5, it's not a GCF with the 12 and the 7, so you can't just divide by 5 like we did last week. So what we're going to have to do instead, well, you could guess and check, and here's a little explanation of that, but because that can be tedious and in some problems there's a lot of options, that's why we do the AC method. So the first step to AC method is multiplying your A and your C, and that's why we call it the AC method. So 5 times 7 is 35. So then we figure out what numbers multiply to 35 for the factors of 35. So this is where you use your factor sheet. And which of those pairs is going to add up to get this negative 12 in the middle? Well, 5 and 7 add up to 12. And since we need a negative 12, we're going to have a negative 5. Oops, sorry. It's not writing out very well. Negative 5 and negative 7. So what you want to do at that point is now rewrite your problem. So we're going to take the 5n squared, and that's going to stay the same. But this middle term is now going to be broken down into two smaller terms that add up to it. So negative 12, if we have negative 5n and negative 7n, that adds up to that negative 12, and then we put up plus 7 at the end. Now, after you set it up, you're now going to take a look at your first two terms there, and you want to take out the GCF, just like we did last week. So what can we divide both of these by? 5, and they also both have some version of an n, so we can take out 5n. So then when we take our 5n out, what is left in those parentheses? Well, 5n squared divided by 5n would just leave me with another n, and negative 5n divided by 5n is negative 1. Now, on the other side, if I want to take out the GCF here, well, the only thing I can divide them both by is 7. But whatever sign is on this term here has to go on the GCF as well. So it's actually going to be negative 7. So now we're going to divide each of those by negative 7. So negative 7n divided by negative 7 leaves me with n. And positive 7 divided by negative 7 is negative 1. Now, if you do this correctly, you should end up with the same term in those two parentheses. And then you can write your final answer. So one of your two factors is the n minus 1 that you see there twice, but that's only one of your factors. And then the 5n minus 7 is your other factor. And that would be your answer, the two factors. Now, if you wanted to check your work, right? To check your work. And this is the great thing about multiple choice quizzes. Hint, hint. If you're doing something like this and you're really struggling with that AC method, well, if you know how to FOIL, you could check some of those answers. So 5n times n would be 5n squared. 5n times negative 1, negative 5n. Negative 7 times n, negative 7n. Negative 7 times negative 1 is plus 7. And notice these two like terms in the middle. So when you combine negative 5 and negative 7, you get that negative 12. And that is what we started with if you take a look there. So that is the AC method. So let's go on to the next page. We'll do another example. Again, this would be, if you were going to do guess and check, you would actually have 4 different possibilities there that you could check, and that would take a while probably. You could FOIL all 4 choices if you wanted to and see which one worked, but you probably only want to FOIL one of them and make sure it's correct. So let's try this one. So my AC number, I'm going to get that by multiplying the first number and the last number. So 3 times 22, which is 66, right? So now use your factor sheet. Figure out what are those factors of 66. And let's see, 6 and 11, I think. Now, do any of those pairs subtract to give you a 5? Do any of those subtract to give you a 5? 6 and 11 subtracts to get a 5, right? But I really need a negative 5. So what signs would my 6 and 11 have to have? Well, remember, the bigger number always gets whatever sign's there. So negative 11 and positive 6. That's how I would get that negative 5 in the middle. So once you know what numbers you're going to use, you're going to rewrite the equation. So 3m squared does not change. But now, instead of negative 5m, I'm going to write negative 11m and positive 6m. Now, it doesn't matter which one you put first and second, but you are going to have to get GCFs with these, right? So let's say you did negative 11m, and then you did the positive 6m, and then your minus 22, right? Now, when you look at the 3 and the 11, are there any GCFs there? Not with 3 and 11, just the m's. And then over here, you have 6 and 22, so they're both divisible by 2. That would be fine. If you wrote it this way instead, with the 6m first and the 11m second, you could still do the problem. So I'm actually going to show you how you could do it both ways, but let's just pick one. So for this one here, I'm going to take out my GCF. Now 3 and 11, there's nothing that divides from both of those, right? So I'm just going to take out an m. So I take out my m. 3m squared divided by m is 3m, and negative 11m divided by m is negative 11. And now I'm going to do the same thing with the other half. So here's 6m and 22. They're both divisible by 2. And it's going to be a positive because we have a plus right there. And then 6m divided by 2 is 3m, and negative 22 divided by 2 is negative 11. Notice we got the same factor twice in the parentheses, so we know that this is looking good. So 3m minus 11 is one of the two factors, and then the m plus 2 combines to give us the second factor. So this would be our factored answer here. Now let's take a look over if we had just switched those middle two terms instead and see how it would work out. So what would be my GCF of 3m squared and 6m? Well, 3 and 6 are both divisible by 3, right? And then m squared and m are both, the smaller one there is the m. So it's 3m as the GCF. So 3m squared divided by 3m leaves me with an m. And 6m divided by 3m is 2. Let's see, let's go there. Okay. Now on this side, negative 11, negative 22, I'm going to take out an 11, and it's going to be negative so that we can match the sign that's here. So negative 11m divided by negative 11 is m, and negative 22 divided by negative 11 is positive 2. So then my two factors would be 3m minus 11 and m plus 2. And notice it's the same two factors we got doing it the other way. So you're going to get the same two factors. It doesn't matter what order you have them in, because if you FOIL the two together, you're going to get the same thing anyway. All right. So just a few practice examples now. So again, I would always encourage you guys, pause the video if you think you know what you're doing, try out the problem, unpause it, and then as I go over it, you can kind of check your work. Okay, so 7 times 7, right, is 49. So 1 and 49, or 7 and 7. Well, we need the combination that's going to add up to get 50, so that's going to be 1 and 49. So 7a squared plus a, my fault. We have to remember that this is a negative 50, so it's going to be a negative a, or negative 1a if you want to put the 1, and a negative 49a. So now we want to do our GCFs. So GCF of these first two here is just going to be a, and we're left with 7a minus 1. On these two, we can divide them both by 7, and we have to take out a negative because there's one right there, so negative 7. And then negative divided by negative to give me positive 7a, and then positive divided by negative is a negative 1. And that's great because then now we have our two factors. 7a minus 1, we got that twice. So 7a minus 1 is one factor, and then those two GCFs, we put those together, and that makes our second factor. And of course, you can FOIL those two to check and see if you get to the original. All right, number 2. So 4 times 5 is 20. And what numbers that multiply to 20? So you can look on your factor sheet. Which of those pairs subtract to give you 8? 10 and 2. Notice it's a negative 8. So that's going to be the bigger number negative, the smaller number positive. So 4b squared. You can either do minus 10 or plus 2 first, whichever one you want. Minus 10b plus 2b minus 5. GCFs. GCF of the first two terms, 4 and 10. They're both divisible by 2, and they both have at least one b, so 2b would be my GCF. 4b squared divided by 2b is 2b. 10b divided by 2b is 5, and I have that minus sign. Then over here, 2b minus 5, there's nothing to divide by there. There's no GCF, which means it's going to be 1. And if you divide them both by 1, they're not going to change. You're just going to be left with 2b minus 5. But that's okay because you ended up with 2b minus 5 in both parentheses. So then you know 2b minus 5 is one of your factors, and your other one is the two GCFs put together. So that'll be 2b plus 1. All right, then number 3. So 6 times 14, I think that's 84. So there's probably a lot of factors. You're definitely going to want to use your factor sheet for this one. 4 goes in 21. Let's see. I think 6 goes in there. And then I think, what else goes into there? 12, right? Okay. So which of those pairs of factors is going to subtract to get you 5? The 7 and 12. Now this time it's a positive 5, so we know the 12 is going to be the positive and the 7 is going to be the negative. So 6c squared plus 12c minus 7c minus 14. Then we do our two GCFs. First pair, we're going to divide them both by 6, and they both have, one has a c squared, one has a c, so we could take out at least that single c. 6c squared divided by 6c, you're left with c. 12c divided by 6c, you're left with 2. Then this set here, 7 and 14 are both divisible by 7, and it has to be a negative. You have to bring that sign down. So negative 7c divided by negative 7 is just c, and negative 14 divided by negative 7 is just positive 2. You got the same thing in parentheses, so you're on a good, that's a good sign. So c plus 2 is one of your two factors, and then the 6c minus 7 come together to make your other factor. Okay, so we're just going to do a couple more, but this time you'll notice that that first term is negative. So whenever you have a negative in the front, that's a hint that you should be looking for a GCF. Now, with all of these problems, you should always be looking for a GCF no matter what, because that'll make it easier if there is one. Sometimes there isn't one, and that's when we do the AC method. Now, if you look here, if you have this negative 2 here, well, 9s are not divisible by 2, but either way, you're still going to divide everything by a GCF of negative 1. So once you divide out that -1, then you're going to have positive 2x squared minus 9x plus 9. Now, because you still have the number in front of the x squared, you now still have to do AC method, but you don't have to worry about that negative because that would have made it very confusing. So 2 times 9 is 18. So you look on your factor chart to see which of those pairs of factors will add up to get 9. 3 and 6. Now we want a -9, so it's going to have to be -3 and -6. So now we rewrite our problem, 2x squared. I'm going to do the -6x first and the -3x second. But you could go in the other order if you want to. And then I'm going to do my GCFs. Now my GCF of 2x squared and 6x, they're both divisible by 2, and they both can take out at least one x. So 2x squared divided by 2x leaves me with x. -6x divided by 2x leaves me with -3. Then on this side over here, I have that negative that's going to have to come out, right? But they're both divisible by 3, so it's -3. -3x divided by -3 is x. 9 divided by -3 is -3. Got the same thing in both parentheses, so we can write our final two factors, x minus 3, and then the 2x minus 3 for the second one. And there you go. So we got our last three problems here. They all have some sort of GCF, with most likely with a negative that you're going to have to take out, right? So this first one will divide out the -1. There's no number that 7, 4, and 3 can all be divided by besides 1, so it's just -1. So after you take out that -1, we have positive 3r squared, positive 7r, positive 4. So now when you do AC method, 3 times 4 is 12. So look up those factors of 12. Which pair add to get 7? 3 and 4, and it's going to be a positive of each. So 3r squared plus 3r plus 4r plus 4. GCFs. GCF of the first two, 3r. So then you're left with r plus 1. On the second two, you can take out a 4. And then you're left with r plus 1. So 3r plus 4 and r plus 1 are your two factors there. All right, number 5, we're going to divide by that -3. Oh, and you know what? So whatever number you divide by, that has to go out in the front there. So we forgot to do that on that one. Should have -1 out front. And then this one up here should have also had that -1 out front. So don't forget that. Now this one is also only divisible by -1 because 8 and 16 are not divisible by anything else. So we have positive 3s squared plus 8s minus 16. So now we'll do AC for this part. So 3 times 16 is 48. So you're going to look up your factor chart. Look up all those factors of 48. Okay, and which pair subtracts to get 8? 12 and 4, and it's a positive 8, so positive 12 and -4. So 3s squared plus 12s minus 4s minus 16. Do our GCFs there. So here we can divide 3 and 12 by 3, and we have an s. And then on this side, we can divide by -4. So 3s squared divided by 3s leaves me with 1s. 12s divided by 3s leaves me with positive 4. -4s divided by -4 leaves me with s, and -16 divided by -4 is positive 4. So now I can write my final answer, which is going to be 3s minus 4. and s plus 4, and that negative 1 that we talked about needs to go out front. All right, and then our final problem for today. So for number 6, again, dividing out that negative. So I have a positive 8t squared minus 6t plus 1. I want to do my AC method, so I get 8. So you're looking up those factors for 8, right? Which of these pairs add to get 6? 2 and 4, but it's a negative 2 and a negative 4 because you get a negative 6. So now we have 8t squared minus 2t minus 4t plus 1. DCF. On the first two, I can take out a 2t, and then I'm left with 4t minus 1. On the second half, I have to take out a negative, but that's all I can take out. So it's negative 1, and then I'm left with positive 4t minus 1. So 2t minus 1, 4t minus 1, and the negative 1 goes out front. All right, and that's it. So make sure you guys check in for one of the meetups because we will be having a quiz on Wednesday. And then after that, you guys get a little break for spring break. All right, talk to you soon. Thanks.